looked through the house before I went up north. I wanted to see if maybe Hazel was there and just didn't hear me or something. Maybe the gnomes gave me that letter, but she was actually back. I walked through the whole house, too tired to even really stand, but there was nothing to answer my calls of fear. Only the wind called back through cracked windows and blue curtains in little directions. There was no one but just the gnomes. I eventually got to the front door and I saw it was cracked open. I realized what was going on. She was out there, looking for me. I bolted out and once again I yelled for her, but no one answered back. Hazel wasn't here. She was truly gone. A new terror filled me now. She's not home and not in sight. She's beyond the house, beyond the hills, and beyond the cornfields, far, far away. My already shell-shocked mind from just witnessing whatever I saw with that man was barely able to concentrate. I went to run, but just collapsed. I just fell onto my knees and sobbed. I don't even know if I had thoughts. Just this rotting thing in my head. I've had so much happen in so little time. Learning about my past that I've buried away on purpose. Learning that there's no way out of this hell. Learning I'm here for my sins and Hazel was for some reason brought along because of it. I just sobbed. My tears painting the grass under me. The world outside my little cone of vision wasn't real now. It was just me and the grass and a void. The wind danced its way past my hoodie and whistled into my ears. The wind itself was from the north and was seemingly getting weaker as I cried, like it was leaving, retreating, leaving me alone, so I was just by myself to feel worse. I stopped for a second when the gnomes came over. They patted my sides, the best that their tiny arms could really do. I turned to them, snot dripping down my face. One of the gnomes had flipped Hazel's note, and they had written a little message in handwriting I could barely even read. "Stay, you need to rest." Alongside the message was doodles and drawings of me and Hazel, along with the gnomes too. I bent down towards the gnome holding the letter, and I hugged him. They dropped the letter and let out a little squeak. Their skin felt soft and kind of comforting to hold. I never really touched the gnomes till now. Their skin was really soft, but there was bits of dirt from them exploring, and the smell of the house was on them. Their touch was comforting, though, relaxing, and made my tears slowly stop. I put the gnome down, but the others soon came, and all of them started to basically just pat my sides and my back, like it was their way of saying, "It's okay." I tried to stop sobbing, but little hiccups would crack through, and the more I hiccuped, the more they'd start to pat me. I hadn't felt this comforted in a long time. I just sat for a second, my eyes starting to feel a little loopy. I felt some of them pat me a little harder all of a sudden, making little clicks. I turned and saw they pointed back to the house, and one of them tried to make a little sleeping gesture by tilting their head and putting their hands to one cheek. I slowly got up, my eyes and body feeling heavy. They gestured again to the makeshift bed, the one that Hazel used. Hazel. I nearly bolted back outside after hearing her name, but they came back to me with a new doodle. "Please rest, you're not well." "But she needs me." They doodled some more, showing a drawing of her with that weapon we used during our fight with those weird fake kids. They left another note on it as well. "She's just traveling. She'll be back." I realized that they can actually hear what I'm saying. But what if she's not okay? They all turned their little cone heads at each other and doodled down some more notes. "You can't save her if you're like this." They doodled down a picture of my face, a picture of me crying. "Please, just rest. We'll let you know if something happens. I let out a sigh and a little bit of a hiccup. Please, promise me that she did something to find her way back at least. They drew a picture of a compass and wrote another note. She took a compass to make sure she knew how to get back. I went ahead and slowly sat down. A creak filled the room as I did. I didn't know if it was my bones or the floor of the house, but I went ahead and just slowly sat down and laid onto the bed. And as I did, the gnomes pushed the door just barely shut again, letting barely lit candles be the only light now. As I lay down, despite my eyes being tired, worries and fears dripped through my mind. My eyes were heavy, but my mind was awake. Flashes and memories of Hazel flooded my mind. Her smile, her scared face, her crying eyes. This blend of all the emotions on her. This ugly painting of her in my head. I started to sniffle a little more, the thoughts and worries at their peak now in my own head. The gnomes noticed and just sat there and patted my side. I wanted to yell at them, but then I remembered that they're kids like me, maybe even younger. This was all they could really do to bring me some sort of comfort. Their cute little noises made my eyes start to feel like they had anvils tied to their lashes. The worries of Hazel, now a little bit of a hope that she'll get back soon. She'll be like an alarm and wake me up with her screams of joy when she sees me here. I soon fell asleep, and my mind wandered into a murky dark of no thoughts, no dreams, just slumber. I was awoken by the sound of something I haven't heard since the jester fairs. I heard the sound of a horse's neighs. The sound wasn't normal, though. The horse sounded wrong or broken, like it was some creature trying to mimic a horse, but doing a terrible job. Along with it was the clacking of its hooves, and on top of that was a laughter. A deep, bellowing cackle. I got up a little too fast, my head feeling light, and I peeked outside. And when my brain finally was able to recognize that it was up and Adam, I saw something I never expected to ever see here. There was a man with a dirty brown leather coat, unbuttoned fully, revealing a navy blue shirt under it. He rode a horse that was palish gray. The hair on the horse looked thin, the horse itself even thinner. Inside of the horse's mouth was a lamp. Some device of some sort was inside of its mouth, making a cone of light in front of everything it ran towards. The horse's eyes were also stitched shut, but it wasn't from actual stitch, but some sort of metal that was either nailed or stabbing into its face. The man riding the horse, his head was shaped like a candy cane. His neck bent at an angle, and the neck itself was longer than me. It was bent to his left, my right, making his head upside down. Attached to the neck was his disgusting head and an even worse face. His nose was big and red. He had what my family called brewer nostrils. A nose that was more red than blood. The red slowly softening back into pale skin the further away it was from the nose. His eyes looked like tiny little lamps in a pit. His sockets bigger than his eyes. The man's skin was almost a dark gray, like he had just rolled in a tub of dust. But the oddest thing was his cowboy hat. It stuck on perfectly fine, but his head was upside down. As I peeked at him, I watched his horse. It wasn't fast, but not slow. Like it was running with a struggle, a limp, only visible from a certain angle of looking. The horse soon stopped and let out another hellish noise. The man got off, slowly, struggling a little as he did. I got a look at his boots as he did, and he had those little spurs horse riders out on the coast had. I felt a little bad for the horse when people used those. The spurs on his looked almost handmade. It didn't look formal like the coast horse riders used. The man turned towards the trailer court that was opposite of the house. He dragged his feet as he walked to the closest trailer, making a loud noise I could hear all the way from the house. And the horse just lazily followed behind him, making what almost sounded like whimpers. I don't know why I did, but I followed behind him, keeping a good distance from the two as he finally approached the door of a trailer. He got up and knocked on the door. Footsteps and laughs rang out from the trailer's thin walls. It was the laughers. I'd spent so much time with the man in the suit, I didn't recall these things even existed. I crouched into some unmowed grass and peeked out. The laughing got louder until the man inside finally opened the door. Suddenly, the horse rider pulled out a revolver. With no hesitation or delay, he fired it into the laughing man's head. I ducked into a bush, my ears hurting from the loud bang that echoed into the countryside and trailer park. Distant birds flew off and cried in fear. The man crumbled right away, making a thud, and the trailer seemed to shake in a way the naked eye can't see. The cowboy made a laugh and entered the house. The horse just stood, the lamp in its mouth casting a shadow from the rare tall blade of grass. I heard a few laughs to my left, and saw that laughers had now left their homes to investigate the noise. As they approached the trailer, the horse turned to them, its light revealing the true paleness of their skin. The horse stared, tilting its head a little. The laughers all stood still for a moment, but a brave one slowly got a little closer. As they did, the horse let out a cry. The horse stomped at the dirt, kicking up loose bits of grass and soil, letting out this horrid noise the whole time. As it did, the cowboy started to run back out, his boots sounding like mini war drums as he bolted back outside. He quickly turned to the crowd of laughers. He then did what I saw some cops do in movies and documentaries. He fired a warning flare. He quickly fidgeted out a blank bullet and put in the gun. I could tell it was blank. All blank bullets were marked with blue paint. He spun the revolver back into proper shape and fired the blank into the sky, its loud reverb echoing across the countryside, being carried by the wind that had just decided to come back. The laughers made a noise I'd never heard before, panicked screaming. Through the same distorted way that the laughs came out, the sounds of panicked crowds left their many mouths, making it sound like a city was on fire just to my side. The laughers ran back and cowered, and the cowboy took aim, and did something I didn't even know was possible outside of little movies and cartoons. He hopped down the steps and fanned the revolver. 5 shots rang out, and 3 laughers fell. One of them sat and twisted, while a sound of crying crowds licked his mouths. The cowboy ran over and stared at the man. I thought he was going to shoot him again, but instead, he took his finger and whistled. The horse ran over and, without any instruction, began to trample the man, doing to him what it had done to the ground earlier. The horse letting out cries the entire time as slowly killed the man. There was no laughers now, only 3 dead ones lying still, like a thrown-away toy. The cowboy spun his revolver back into his pocket and got back onto the horse. The horse's head turned my way, and I dived deeper into the tall grass. I could see the light cast shadows of grass blades onto grass blades onto grass blades. The light slowly tilted away like a lighthouse built on wax foundations. The sound of the horse running off trailed towards the house. By the time I peeked my head back up when the sound was quiet, I saw them heading right to the house. I realized, looking at the house, I had left my rucksack there. I knew I should just wait, but what if he'd steal it? I had food and water in there, a lighter. He just shot 3 people for fun, so him stealing a little girl's rucksack wasn't off the table. I not so quietly ran towards the house, watching him park the horse near the front door. The horse's head peering into the blocked windows as the cowboy slowly got off. He kicked the already creaked door wide open, the sky's light pouring into the house like water into a glass. The horse's head turned over to look at the countryside's fields, and as it did, I quickly snuck past the horse and went to the house. I hid behind a couch and peered out, watching the cowboy. He walked around the house, staring at the candles and little drawings by those rotten kids and gnomes. He seemed oddly sad looking at the photos. His creepy grin had seemingly turned into a neutral expression. Not a frown, but not a grin. He walked around a little more, that same expression glued onto his face. He looked at the stairs, seemingly debating if he should go up. He took a few steps up, but a gnome had suddenly ran past him, making little clicks too. His grin came right back, and he gave chase to that singular gnome, his boots stomping, creating a thunderous noise. I looked around and looked to the blanket I once laid on. There was my rucksack. I hurried over and grabbed it, trying to quickly slide it on. Suddenly, a can of food had fallen out of my backpack. I went to go grab it, but I stopped when I heard a metal click. I turned to my right and saw him. He was staring at me, his tiny fish-like eyes glued to mine. I could get a glimpse of the color of his teeth. They were a disgusting orange, and his gums were black like ink. His one hand held a revolver, and it began to shake. He started to laugh and take aim. I screamed and ducked behind the couch again, and as I did, a deafening sound nearly popped my ears. The sound of the revolver shooting flooded the entire house and danced off the walls. I couldn't hear my own thoughts, just this ringing. After what felt like minutes, I got up and saw he was now running towards me. I bolted up and booked to the front door, and as I walked out the open door, I saw the horse now staring at the doorway. Its blinding lamp that was in its mouth was like a sun in this place. I winced my eyes as I saw it, and it made a cry. Its mouth moved down and I could see it now, running right for me. I dived out of the way, and the horse missed me. As I dived onto the rough dirt, I thought it would tear up my clothes. I swore some pebbles dug into my skin. I looked at the horse as it rammed its head right into the house's walls, chipping some wood and paint as it stood in shock, letting out a sad cry of pain. To my left came that metal clicking again, the cowboy's gun. I didn't even look at him, I just got up and bolted away, hearing that same loud pop followed by the sound of dirt flying. I looked back for a second as I ran, seeing the cowboy slowly reload his gun as he let out some sort of angry noise. I ran towards the trailer park, looking back almost the whole time. The man got on his horse, and soon it came bolting for me. I ran faster, my feet wanting to die from the pain. I was able to reach a trailer, and as I looked back, the horse was practically able to grab me if it had hands. I scanned the trailer to look for some way to hide, and saw that there was a hole in its siding. I ran into it, my backpack almost getting caught into the hole, but with a little struggle I got in. As I got in, I looked back and saw his hand was reaching for me now. If I had been a second slower getting in, he'd have grabbed me. I got a look at his fingers. They were swollen and pale. His hand had these little bubbles and warts on it. The warts were red in color and the bubbles looked like they were leaking pus. His sleeves was filthy, and I assumed the rest of his coat was like this when you looked this close. After a bit, he gave up and just seemingly walked away. I didn't even hear the sound of the horse. He seemingly just walked off. For a moment, I just sat there and hyperventilated, trying to catch my panicked breath. My body was sore and my mind was like mush. And all of a sudden, my cheeks felt wet. It was tears. I was crying now, and loudly too. I went into a fetal position and barely was able to speak. Hazel, I'm scared. Just come home, goddammit. I started to kind of flail around. I punched the hard dirt and stomped it too. Why couldn't you just wait? Why did you have to go looking? You impatient little brat. You damn moron. Why are you always making my life hell for... The sound of tapping above me was happening. It was his boots clinking on the floor. A muffled laugh leaped through the world above me as I stopped my screaming, now only hiccuping and sniffing. Suddenly, there was a lighter tap that clicked a little bit above me, a few inches away. I scooted back, and next thing I knew, a bullet came flying through. I flew back, screaming in fear. A small hole of light came through, and a loud laugh, a little less muffled now. Before I could process what was going on, another shot nearly hit me came through. I kept scooting back as more shots came through now. By this point, the shots didn't even hurt my ears. I didn't know if I was losing my hearing or because I was under a floor. It was muffled. I kept scooting back until he stopped firing, and an angry stomp was all I heard. He shook off some dust from the underside of the floor, making me cough. He then kept stomping and seemed to do it on purpose. Like he knew the dust made me cough, so he could find me easier. I eventually was able to cover my mouth so I could stop coughing, and I tried to crawl out through the hole in the siding. But just as I got to it, the horse's light shined through the hole, and it let out an even louder cry than earlier. The footsteps from inside the trailer grew silent as the ones outside grew louder. He quickly came back outside and tried to reach for me again, this time thinking I was closer. I leaped back and realized I was stuck. Unless I can stop him, he'll either grab me or shoot me. I looked around for anything to throw at his incoming hand. There was only pebbles and dust bunnies. But eventually I did see something. A small little bit of loose metal. I ran over and grabbed it. It came off easily. The metal was covered in some black gunk and rust, but my panicked mind didn't take note. I could see his hand actually getting a little deeper in, as he was scooting closer and closer to the hole to get me. And he spoke the first audible words I'd ever heard come out of his mouth.
Little rat, come out!
A little shocked at hearing him speak, I just stood there. I eventually snapped out of it and ran over. I whacked his hand around 3 times before he withdrew. Each time, a loud grunt of pain came through. When he did move back, he got up and kicked the siding out of anger, seemingly shaking the air around me. Before I knew, he began to tear at the siding now, yanking it off. The loud screeches of metal hurting my ears like the gunshots. I scooted back in horror, watching as he was trying to crawl for me. He was crawling more and more, and I could see his disgusting face, when suddenly, he stopped. The horse began to throw a fuss and screech loudly, and the light in its mouth was dimming. The cowboy quickly scooted back, completely ignoring me, and then I heard him speak again.
Stay on, you little birds.
He tried smacking the horse's face, making the light shine for just a moment, but it was only for a moment, and it would go dim again. The man was more panicked, looking at the trailers.
Stay. I'll fix it.
He ran into the trailer above me. I quickly scurried out and ran right past the horse. The horse didn't even bat its stitched eyes at me. I quickly ran into a bush and watched the trailer again. A light from one of the windows had turned dark, followed by hurried footsteps. The man came back. He grabbed the horse's face. His body was turning pale. Not the horse. Him. The cowboy was turning pale all of a sudden. As he turned pale, the horse was starting to look weak, its legs shivering.
Stay with me.
He opened the cover to the lamp in the horse's mouth, a beacon of light shining onto his disgusting face. He quickly dug into it, the horse letting out cries and gags. He took out a bulb from the mouth, and then weakly shoved the new one in, that he had just stolen from the trailer. The new bulb flickered on, its yellow light bright like the sun, in the fleshy jaws of the horse. The man's pale skin gaining its dusty color back, and the horse's legs regained their strength as the man let out a sigh of relief.
It was close. I must find more light.
He looked around now, his eyes scanning everything. They suddenly met the bush I was in. I shivered, thinking he found me. He came closer and closer, his laughing slowly coming back into his lungs. He got right up to the edge of the bush, and I could hear his breathing very clearly now. It sounded like a dying pig. He stood there, looking in some direction. I couldn't get a view of his face, as I was hiding more deeply in the grass. He laughed a little more before stomping past the bush and going to a nearby trailer. The horse weakly followed behind him, wheezing from its own weight. I just sat in the bush, feeling the cold sweat drip down my face. I realized I had to go now and look for Hazel now, but I thought about her and froze stiff. For some reason, thinking of Hazel made me freeze up. All I could imagine was her just being annoying. I didn't know why I was thinking about that as I was going to go hunt her down. Why do I have this hatred for her suddenly? Why was all these bad memories of her coming back? All the screaming and thrashing in our car ride, stupid jokes and her obnoxious laughing. All this came crashing over my mind like a wave. I thought for a moment as I sat there, do I just leave her? I mean, No, why am I thinking this? What in the hell is wrong with me? Why would I even think this? I started to think back to what landed me here in this place. Me trying to drown her in the bathtub a few years back. That memory used to be far gone in my mind, till the man in the suit dug it up, with his shovel made of static hands. Am I the same person I was all those years ago? A hateful girl who's just wanting to never be near Hazel? Why haven't I learned anything? Why haven't I changed? I started to cry now, my eyes hurting during it. Must be because all I do now is cry. Ever since we've been here, in this world, I've done nothing but cry. At least it feels like it. I think Hazel's cried less than me, and she's younger and gets scared easier. I'm just a waste is what I am. Dark and unwanted memories and thoughts flooded my mind like a fog onto a coast, blocking out the world. The world around me felt like a light in a room, only there so I'm not in darkness. But that was it. The damp grass, cold wind, distant birds, all of it sounded so far away now. I tried to get up, but my mind was dizzy and the world was seeming to twist around me. The thoughts and memories were at their peak. The memories of Hazel crying, nearly drowning, the bubbles in the water. The bubbles. The damn bubbles. That image made something in my stomach bubble up as well. The feeling of her skin in water. The feeling of her stray hairs twisting around my hand and her panicked shaking. The feelings and memories loud and screaming into all of my senses. Like a megaphone was attacking everything my body could sense and feel. I swore I could even feel the smell of the tub that day. Then I remembered her blurry face. Her blurry face like a broken mirror, screaming in fear. I felt the bubble building in my stomach pop, and I puked. I leaned against a small rock near the bush, my vomit staining the already dead dirt. The thoughts still kept going, the memories and fears like wind sirens in my body. Everything that I've done that led me to this place was running across my eyes like a projector. The memory of my life, the day Hazel was born, the first days of school, the last, our holidays, our worst moments, our best. Slowly, ever so slowly, the ideas finally stopped, like a car brake taking its time. After some more vomit hit the dirt, I finally stopped. I plopped onto the dirt and laid against the rock, my rucksack like a soft support against my tired back. I laid there and caught my breath, my body feeling weak and tired. I felt like I was dying. Like if I fell asleep, I just wouldn't wake up. Suddenly, the horse's approaching cries broke the fairly calm silence. It made me get up and look towards it, the light in its mouth leaving a rapidly growing path of light towards me. I ducked back into the bush, looking at the cowboy on the horse. I realized in his hands was a gas can. And while he was running towards me, he was pouring the gas, leaving a dark trail I didn't notice. I looked at the trail, and it led to the trailers, little branching routes to nearby other ones. Near the other routes were some empty cans lying in the dirt as well. He had managed to do all this while I was having my little meltdown. The man was laughing the whole time as he poured this dark oil. The can eventually ran out, and the man's laughing with it. Its last few drops being near the bush I was hiding in. He jumped off the horse's knees buckling a little as he did. He dug into his pockets and fished out a small box. I quickly realized it was a box of cigarettes. He took a lighter to it and smoked. It looked so odd seeing a man with a crooked head try to smoke a cigarette. The way he had to put the cigarette into his mouth looked more like a man fishing for his credit card in his pocket. I looked at the lighter, and it was so rusty that I just assumed it was naturally brown. He lit the cigarette and took a long puff, its front glowing an orange glow I hadn't seen in a long time. He slowly yanked and twisted it out of his orange teeth and black gums. He let out a cough that made me want to puke again. I felt like I could hear the liquid in his lungs. He took one more puff before letting a laugh hidden by a cough. He then took his cigarette and threw it onto the trail of oil. A loud whoosh filled the air as the flame quickly chased the oil, like a fox hunting a bunny in the woods. The fire very quickly reaching the other trailers, and small little flickers peeked out the windows from the little bit of gasoline he had put in there. Looking at the main path, the one that he had just stopped making, I saw that it was much larger than the rest, and it branched out. Bits of grass not even connected to the oil began to spark up, now making little branches in the grass and dirt. It was like watching the roots or branches of a tree grow at the speed of light. I then realized the flames were going to start eating the bush I was hiding in, so I ran out, but as I did, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my left arm. I saw that the flames had stuck to my hoodie. The fire on my skin was like a million hot needles poking into me. I let out a yelp of fear and pain and threw myself onto the dirt, rolling and turning to put the flames out. After some time, the fire did stop, leaving a dark spot where the flames once were. But when I rolled back and looked up, I saw the cowboy staring at me. He didn't even pull out his 6-shooter. Instead, he ran towards me and grabbed my leg and yanked me. I kicked and screamed around, trying to get him to let me go, but his bloated and wart-ridden fingers were too strong. He quickly reached into his pocket and pulled out some rope. I tried to kick and thrash harder and started to slip away, and he took note. And the last thing I saw was the butt of his revolver approaching my head. I woke up, and I was greeted by the sight of sickly yellow lights. I got up, my head still aching and light from him hitting my head with his revolver, and my vision was still a little blurry. I blinked, and my vision was slowly getting more clear. I was in some sort of attic, made of wood that had looked like it'd seen an ocean worth of rain. Around me were crates upon crates upon crates, some of them stacked almost to touch the ceiling. In the corners of the room were piles of bulbs, light bulbs. A few of the crates were open, and in them was even more light bulbs. I realized that the cowboy had kidnapped me and thrown me in here. But there was no rope on me, no bruises or cuts. He just threw me up here for some reason. I started to go ahead and get up and looked around. The windows in the attic casted this blue light. The stains in the window left little shadows, like a camo pattern was being projected onto the floor that parts of those light bulbs couldn't reach with its bright fingers. I looked around the attic, noticing more and more bulbs in the oddest of places. A burlap sack, a shelf, a TV with a shattered screen. All of them stuffed with light bulbs, and wherever they could be crammed. I looked next to the TV and saw something that made me jump for a moment. There were some mannequins leaning against the walls, all of them missing their heads, except for one. One of them had a deer head pinned into it. Dark, dry blood covered the torso. I began to worry if he'd do that to me. What if that's why he took me? Because he wants to make me a trophy? I felt panic fill my lungs. The idea of my head being hung up like that just made me want to puke. I looked around the room more and realized that the cowboy had taken my rucksack too. I looked around every corner, but it was nowhere to be seen. I began to realize all I'd be missing if it was gone. Water, cans of food, the lighter, all these things I need to survive. I started to look for an exit and saw the attic stairs were folded up. I'd have to pull a lever to get them down, but before that, I'd need to scoot a crate, and it'd make noise. And even then, the lowering of the stairs would definitely bring his attention. I looked around for spots to hide, so when I pulled it, I didn't die. I looked through every little nook and cranny that could fit me, but I found one near a wall on the far side, a little spot I could slide into between a crate and the wall. It wasn't much room. I practically had to hold my breath and shrink my stomach to fit in there. But I decided that I need to get my rucksack. So I went ahead and took one of the crates and scooted it, trying hard to not make any noise, but the ball made glass clanking noises inside. Not the sound of bulbs, but broken ones. Broken glass barking against more broken glass. I eventually got it up to the lever, and I jumped up and didn't reach it. I made a loud thump as I landed back on the crate, and as I landed, I heard a distant grumble. I tried again and again and again. Each time it seemed louder, and I swear the grumbles were getting closer. And eventually I started to hear footsteps. Finally, I managed to pull it, and as I did, it made a loud crash. Just as that happened, the familiar laugh of the cowboy came back. I quickly ran all the way to the little spot I had found earlier, just barely peeking my head out. I watched as the approaching steps finally had a shape to them. The cowboy came up and looked around. His breathing was angry, like a bull wheezing. As he looked around for me, I had noticed something about his hat I had never noticed before. It was fused to his head, and that's why it didn't fall off despite his head being so crooked. There were little strings of flesh from the top of his head that were stuck to the hat, like strings of glue on an object. And as he moved, I could see his hat kind of jiggled a little, along with the strings of flesh. It wasn't fully attached, but there was just enough strings so it was there and looked like he was wearing it. I also realized that there was some dried blood on the top of his head, but I would have never been able to see that earlier. I was able to get a much closer look at his face, no longer thrashing in his palms. He had little pimples and warts that coated his face like sprinkles on a moldy cake. His eyes were beyond tiny. His sockets so large, but the eyes so small. And it looked like his face was sagging. Like after being crooked for so long, it had finally started to adapt and fall down. The empty sockets being the biggest at the top of his head. It looked like somebody yanked down on a towel that had a hole in it, and the hole just got larger. It felt like that zookeeper that we had saw so long ago, but backwards. Instead of this large eye that was bigger than his head, he had fish eyes that I'm surprised he could even see out of. His tiny eyes kept scanning the room, his laughs becoming angry grunts and breaths. He then spoke, clearly in blood-red rage.
Where are you? What did you do?
He suddenly grabbed a bulb from a shelf and threw it out a window, the glass upon glass making a loud, deafening noise. I winced and whimpered a little as I slid further into the gap, and he stomped and screamed out.
I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna shove your eyes down your throat.
He stomped out, now grabbing his gun at his side, his loud footsteps echoing throughout the house as he searched for me. I had waited till the steps became muffled and distant before getting out of my spot. I slowly tipped down the attic stairs and saw the rest of this man's home. It wasn't a dirty home, but it was far from anything civil. Bits of paint leaned down the walls, and those said walls were this dry red color. Holes in the roof and stains on the carpet were nearly everywhere. But despite the condition, the house seemed to be running just fine. On the wall were some paintings, and all of them depicted the same thing. Eyes and flesh staring in random directions. It reminded me of that place the man in the suit took me. It started to feel like those eyes were some figure here. Like an actor or a musician in our world. Someone that's well known, a name that's recognized across countries. It was so weird. I've seen drawings of eyes. I saw eyes in my dream before I woke up in this nightmare world. I saw eyes when I was with the man in the suit. It was so strange. They're everywhere. Is it some sort of symbol, like a cross, maybe? Like this world's messed up religion. I've realized that I need to stop thinking about it because I'm in a house with a man that has a gun. So I shook my head, snapped myself out of it, and walked around some more. Bookshelves with equal amounts of books and dust were around some parts of the home. Books that I'd never want to read, nor would I probably understand. More headless mannequins were around the house, most with animal heads attached to them. Pigs, cows. I saw one in the corner even had a horse. That feeling came back. That image and that fear of my head getting torn off, being put onto a mannequin. Maybe he wouldn't do it, but those threats from earlier say otherwise. And either way, he probably wants me dead in some way or another. So I kept creeping around, looking around corners very slowly to see if he was there. But eventually, I reached the living room, and it was the largest room yet. A fireplace lighting the entire area, and near it was a kitchen, almost just as big. In the middle of the kitchen was a table, and on it was some dead animal, but I couldn't at all tell what it was. It was fluffy like a sheep, but it had deer-like legs, and the tail that looked like something from an armadillo. In the kitchen was a window lighting the dead creature like a stage light, a spotlight for a dead actor of this awful play. All that was missing was some stupid, cheery song they sung like in school. I heard footsteps approaching again, near the living room. I quickly looked and realized that there was nowhere to really hide, at least in the living room. I got into the kitchen and opened one of the lower cabinets. The cabinets themselves wrapped around the kitchen like a U-shape. I kept the drawer door open just a little to peek out and watch for the cowboy, who soon enough stomped in. He had his revolver in a shaking hand as he was breathing through his teeth. Some drool was rolling out of his mouth and dripping down to his nose, then falling off on his forehead, like a really messed up reverse version of sweating.
Where are you? Even if you get out, the horse will get you, and I'll skin you like a mud-covered bunny.
He put his revolver back into his coat pocket as he stomped over to a record player in the corner. He opened a drawer right under it and pulled out a really dusty record. He then sat it into the player before going to the couch near the fireplace. A creepy tune played throughout the whole house now. Little crackles and pops would come from the record player, deafeningly loud. The man began to hum to the tune now. I slowly slid out of the cabinet and looked around the living room for my rucksack. And eventually I saw it right near the couch in the middle of the living room. But it was near the side that he was on. I crawled over slowly, praying to any god in this world that the floor didn't creak under me. Slowly, I managed to reach his couch, and I could see the man reaching into his pocket to grab a cigarette. As I heard the click of his lighter, I went to grab the rucksack. Right as my fingers were about to touch it, the man grabbed it. He opened it and dug through. I could hear the crinkle of cans and water bottles and food. He eventually dug the lighter out of it and used it. He threw his other lighter down as it made a soft thud. He lit the smoke and took a drag. As he did, I grabbed my rucksack. Although the lighter was useful, I didn't need it. I eventually began to crawl away, but suddenly I heard a mumble. I turned back and saw the man was staring at me, his tiny eyes just barely glowing from the window in the kitchen.
I'm gonna break every goddamn finger in your hand.
I got out of my crawl and began to start running to the kitchen again, and the man gave chase. I crawled back into the lower cabinets, and as I scooted deeper into them, he started to dig his nasty hands into them, looking for me with his wart-ridden fingers. It felt like I was back under that trailer again. I looked around and saw there were some bits of plates, shattered plates. I grabbed one and slashed at his hand, but he didn't give up. He didn't even grunt in pain. I kept going slash after slash, his hand soaking in blood. I eventually used all my strength and then slammed it into his hand, and that was enough for him to jolt back. He yanked the plate out of his hand and threw it onto the floor, making a loud crash as it did. I then started to hear a gentle tap at the top now. I scooted back a little, wondering what he was doing above me. I didn't know why he was tapping the counters, but then a bang and a bullet answered my question. The bullet shot through the top of the cabinet, shattering some more plate bits. I covered my face, not wanting to lose my eyes. He fired another shot, inches away from me. I began to crawl through the cabinets now, since they all looped around the kitchen, bumping into little plates. More and more shots rang out, followed by the sound of him reloading and plates shattering. After a moment, I crawled under a pipe that was connected to a sink up above. He shot a bullet into the sink, causing water to spray everywhere, coating my head and back in it. I tried to crawl faster now. It was harder since my clothes were now wet and weighing me down. I eventually reached the other side of the cabinets, and he opened it up, trying to grab me. I scooted back up just enough for him to miss me, and I just sat there, crying profusely in fear and terror. Stop! I'll leave! Just let me go. I don't want to die. The man let out a laugh and spoke again.
Your head will look great on those dolls. You look like a doll.
I tried crawling back again, sobbing the entire time. As I did, he suddenly opened a cabinet near me and yanked me out. I flailed and screamed, hoping some sort of good monster or even another kid would hear me. He shoved off the animal on the table and shoved me right onto it. He kept me pinned down with his other hand, and he used the other one to pull out his revolver. He put the revolver right to my temple. I could feel the cold steel on my forehead, and the revolver itself was practically half my size. His hand was shaking as his crooked head had to practically look up to see me on the table.
He burned me. The last thing my eyes saw before they were ash was light. The light of the sun.
He snorted and coughed up some blood onto the table.
I killed him because it was fun. The screams he made when the saw.
He began to belly laugh and cough, and I was crying the entire time, to the point where my eyes hurt. I was screaming still, praying someone or something heard me. I wasn't religious, but for once in my life I was praying for some sort of god. He reached into a cupboard and pulled out a knife. He put his gun right near me, the barrel still facing me. I screamed a little louder in my mind, praying. I've never prayed before. Please, God, please, please. He lifted the knife high into the air, and I could see his hand flinch as he was about to stab me with it. But suddenly, a loud crash from outside came out. The loud crashing was bangs of something falling, being kicked, followed by the sound of his horse. Both of us turned over to the window to see what was going on. As he went to look, his grip loosened. I quickly slipped out of his hands and went over to his revolver and grabbed it. I felt like I was carrying it like people carry a shotgun. It took both my hands to hold it since it was so large, and I had to use my whole hand to pull the trigger. Right as I had finished getting adjusted and holding it, the man turned to me after suddenly hearing my commotion. Right before I pulled the trigger, I saw something in his eyes. Fear. Fear I hadn't seen since the bulb in the horse's mouth nearly died. I pulled it and the recoil knocked me down and made my ears ring. I got up and rubbed my ears, a weak attempt to ease the ringing. I looked and saw I hit him right in the side. He sat on the floor, moaning and groaning, and I realized this was my last chance. I hastily got down and threw my rucksack on and shoved the revolver in. By the time I had finished shoving it in, he was now only getting up. I ran around the living room looking for a way out as I could hear his grunts slowly become laughs.
I'll rip your teeth out of your skull.
I eventually saw that he had a front door. Although I couldn't reach it, there was a doggy door on it, barred up with planks. I bolted over and tried to yank at them, and they surprisingly came off easily. The nails were barely even in them. They were more like tape holding it than nails. As I yanked out the last one, I turned and saw the man was sprinting for me. I quickly crawled out and ran outside. Although the sky here isn't bright, seeing it again made my eyes hurt. I saw that I was in the middle of the woods now. No sign of the trailer park, landlord's house, nothing. I ran around the side of the house, hearing the door slam open as the man bellowed. I eventually found myself at a little barn. The door was wide open, so I slid in. I looked around to see what was in here. It was horses, but all of them were either dead or sleeping on the ground in their little cages, and I didn't want to find out which one of the two it was. So I tiptoed around the barn, as I could hear him running around outside, not even having a clue I was in here. As I looked around, I could see bits of hay, and in some of the bits of hay, light bulbs were poking out. I stepped onto one bulb, causing a loud glass pop. I stood there, and nothing happened. I kept walking until, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something twitch. I froze stiff, and one of the horses got up. And I quickly realized which one it was when that familiar light blinded my cold face. It was the horse from earlier. It saw me and let out loud cries. Almost immediately the cowboy came back in, barging in with his knife as he started to go from a sprint to a walk. He slowly walked towards me as I quickly dug into my rucksack, trying to find the revolver. He was very close to me, and I was worried I wouldn't be able to get it out in time, but midway through his walk, the horse started to sound weak. The light began to dim, and its cries more of pain than fear. The man darted his attention to the horse now, his eyes filled with dread. He quickly ran over and pulled out a spare bulb out of the pile of hay, and as he did, I finally got the revolver out, watching him turn pale as he weakly put the bulb into his mouth, but it was a dud. He let out a panicked gasp and practically limped to another bulb, and then suddenly, I felt my own bulb light up in my head. This horse, it's somehow keeping him alive. Like it's tied to him. The man limped over and shoved the bulb in, and the horse quickly began regaining its life, and the man's body started to look less and less pale. I realized I shouldn't be aiming for him. I should be aiming for the horse. The man slowly regained his dark gray skin color, and I quickly aimed for the horse now, and the man noticed. He began to run for me, but I fired my shot. And I felt myself get pushed back, my ears ringing. I got myself back up and saw the man wasn't chasing me now. He was inches away from me, but was looking at the horse, and his face filled with horror. The man fell to his knees, his skin almost instantly getting pale as the horse lied limp, barely even twitching. The horse's light was flickering and was barely even dim. barely even lighting the wall near its dying body. The man dug his knife into his thigh out of frustration, barely even grunting out of pain.
No. No!
He began to cry into his hands, and I noticed that his skin itself was bubbling. It was like it was waving and pulsing. The man lifted his hands off his face, and suddenly a black smoke came out of his face. The horse too let out black smoke through the little gaps of the lantern in its mouth, and the man was screaming the entire time he had this smoke coming out of him. He eventually stopped and fell to the ground, his body limp now. His eyes were gone, just sockets. From his sockets, nose, and mouth, the black smoke began to slowly just go away. More like a steam than anything now. I slowly shoved the gun back into the rucksack and walked out, shaking. Once I got out, I fell to my knees. I lazily threw the rucksack off and just stared off into the forest beyond this house and barn. This green fog filling the land. I had no idea where I was, and the idea of saving Hazel felt long gone. Hazel was beyond where I was now, and there was no way I'd ever reach her. I felt tears leak off my face for what must be the 1,000th time this day alone. But instead of crying, I started to laugh. It started with giggles, then chuckles, and became full-blown belly laughing. I laughed loudly like I just saw the funniest comedy ever. My cheeks were hurting from the amount of laughing I was doing. I started to feel disgusted at myself. I was laughing over killing something? Granted, it wasn't human, I think, but why was I laughing? I started to punch myself in an attempt to stop, but I just kept laughing. I tried to hold my breath, but the laugh still slipped out. I kept going till my lungs hurt, punching myself till I probably left a bruise. Finally, the laughing stopped and turned into sobbing. I put my face into my hands and just barely spoke. Hazel, come back. Come back, Hazel. I felt my eyes grow heavy, and I slowly drifted off to sleep. My body feeling like I was a heavy ship. My eyes were its anchors, leading it to a deep sea. And in that sea I found something. A nightmare. My nightmare began with me waking back up in that crazy doctor's place. The one I was sent when I originally had my night terrors. I was back in that same room too, the one with the crappy bed and creepy paintings. I was still wearing my hoodie though, thankfully. I looked out of the window and saw that the once gray sky of the counties was pink. It was this pink light and what looked like little rocks spinning and circling around the place. Since my height was shortened, like it's been ever since I woke up in this place, I couldn't even peek out to see what was going on outside. I've never understood why since I woke up in this place, why I'm shorter. I was half my height ever since we woke up in this place. I knew it was just one of many things I'll never understand here, though. I decided to slide off the bed I was in and walk out of my room. The door was cracked open, the familiar sickly yellow light out there that I knew. I always remember dreading seeing somebody walking by. I always thought it was the counselor, or as he often asked to be called, Otto. Otto was, well, I hated him. When my night terrors were at their all-time worst, my mom was asking for where I should go to get help. and people recommended the county psychiatric institute. It was known to have many good doctors, and I was left with the only one who wasn't. He was old, but younger than my mom and dad, and his hair was always messy, and he always had these eye bags. He never looked like he got enough sleep. Otto is one of the only people I truly would say I wish death for. Not too long after telling him about my nightmares and about how I saw the ferryman, he got so scary. He'd scream at me when I told him my memories were fuzzy, saying I was lying and that I didn't want help. He hooked up all different types of gizmos and doohickeys to me. One time he even used what he called a mind projector and studied me in my sleep. He said that I disappeared when I had my nightmares, but my mom helped to convince me that he was probably just lying and going insane. 'Cause he was just insane, a mad doctor trying to learn about the ferryman. That's all he ever cared for, and some girl named Cece. Luckily though, one day my mom and dad visited, and I broke into tears, telling her all the nasty things he was doing. Her and dad stormed into his room, and I still remember the screaming. They normally never scream like that, but I still remember hearing them. Kids from the neighboring dorms peeked their heads out to Otto's room. Sometimes I think back to that day when I feel like mom and dad hate me, when I feel like they only love Hazel. And I wonder if maybe I was wrong. And now I wonder if it was worth nearly drowning Hazel those years back and booking my spot here. I walked further into the place and got reminded this isn't real. The hallways that led to other places and rooms bent in impossible depths and up to the highest gates of heavens. The lights on the ceiling following them the entire distance until a dead end or corner. The only hallway that wasn't distorted and going up or down at an impossible length was Otto's office, like a framed gate to doom. The doors to the other kids were closed and handles too high to reach. I walked in what would be Otto's rotted office, but when I stepped in, I was met with an empty room. Trash littered the floor and drawings and marks covered the walls. As I looked around, a muffled conversation came through one of the walls, and I could recognize one of the voices. Otto. Otto and his creepy voice, along with what sounded like a girl crying. I leaned against the wall and couldn't make out any words. I could tell that the person he was yelling at was a girl, and that was about all I knew.
There was no more.
Ask who he is. Ask what he wants.
It doesn't work that way.
You were right there. Don't tell me you did nothing. Not a damn thing.
Stop!
I'm beginning to doubt you've seen this candleman. Perhaps you've invented the whole story.
Please stop my head!
I leaned back and went to leave this office, but suddenly loud footsteps came from the door. I quickly panicked and realized there was no place to hide. I tried hiding in a corner that would be the hardest to spot me, but when the door opened, the person peeked towards me, and I heard a familiar voice. It was the ferryman.
Tired toes tread the familiar corridors again, I see.
I looked at him, and he was just like I recalled him looking like. The sagged face to his knees, the snake green skin, his hat on his head, and the trench coat. "What do you want? Why did you do this to us? You're sick and evil." He just stood there, his breathing sounding desperate through his gill-like wrinkles.
I hear all in your questions towards the broadcaster. I will answer one, only one for you. Rotten children like you deserve at least crumbs for dinner.
I stomped my foot out of anger and yelled at him. "Just kill me, damn it! Just do it! Do it!" He barely tilted to the right, looking at me from a slight angle, like he needed a better look at me in my dirty stitched hoodie.
Death would be too good for kids like you.
I sighed and looked at the ground. He wasn't gonna hurt me. He never does, and never will, even when I ask him to. Any question I ask.
But only one.
I stood there, thinking about the things I don't get and thought carefully. Why are the monsters here? Why are we here? What did Hazel... That was it. I knew my question that I would go ahead and ask him. Why did you drag Hazel here? I know why I'm here, but why her? She does nothing. She's innocent. The broadcaster said so. He did an attempt at leaning back and let out a laugh. I suddenly woke up, now inside the landlord's house again, even though I'd just been dragged to who knows where. Was that all a dream? Everything with the cowboy? My rucksack was even near me again, but I was frozen. I wasn't able to move. I could look around and blink and breathe, but I couldn't move. I tried to speak, but nothing slipped out of my lips. The gnomes were just walking around, and a few of them were doodling. I tried with effort to move, but nothing happened. Suddenly, from where the kitchen was, the ferryman appeared. He walked in, and the gnomes seemed to just not see him. They didn't at all move or even look at him. The ferryman avoided stepping on them, as if they were actually able to see him, and slowly waddled over me. I felt a horrid fear growing in my veins. I was frozen still, but this walrus-like man was just walking towards me and standing over me. He was eventually just mere inches away from me. His chin was close to my face because of how much it sagged, and he finally spoke.
I know why your sister is here. To punish you. That's right. She has no sin, no desire to flee the life she had. She's only here as your punishment, and yours alone. I dragged her here, not because she's a soul of needles and moldy teeth, but to punish you. Your punishment is seeing her suffer, seeing her cry, want to die. That's your punishment. You were too hopeful to suffer the curse of the crooked children, but too horrid to stay in the waking world. This was the only way things could go. It was written in stone before your birth. I know how all things end and start in this universe. Even the eyes above me don't know that, but I do. That's why they sent me across the lake of reality, past the pond of dreams, and behind the wooded lands of guilt, to send regards of those who have souls of barbed wire and thorns. People like you need to rot. Your tainted skin stains the waking world sheets. It takes entire wars for them to be changed. And I am the cleaner, a servant of the good women and men that build your roofs. I am the inevitable. I am no man, or I am no being. I am but just a rule. The candleman, the grim reaper, time itself. I go by 1,000,000 names across the year. Your kind is unable to understand what I am and the scheme of the cosmos.
If I wasn't frozen then, I would have been on my knees sobbing. Instead, my tears just rolled off my cheeks as I laid there. Him standing over me. I don't even know what to say. He suddenly stepped back and spoke a little more.
So now you sit in this place, a twisted mirror, shattered in some spots. In those cracks lie the residents of this cursed home. Their cursed homes leaning and bent from sins, warped through foggy and cracked glasses.
He finally turned around and walked towards the kitchen, his loud steps like thunder in a storm. He finally stopped near the door in the backyard and turned.
Ascend.
He snapped his fingers and like an unlocked door, I sprung up. I flung up and let out a gasp. Tears were covering my cheeks as I laid there. And I just sat for a second and looked around. I saw my rucksack lying near me, causing the memories of what was just a moment ago to flood back. I reached over to unzip it, and inside was the gun. I felt dizzy and confused. Was I somehow brought back by the ferryman, even though I had just fallen asleep in that damn barn? The next thing I knew, I started to sob. I mean, sob. My mouth was just letting out cries like I had just felt the worst physical pain. My eyes a broken dam. I felt some snot even leaking out of my nose. I just felt this overwhelming pressure, like a real physical pressure on my back, drowning me in some sort of water. In that water, fearing the fish that swam around me. I felt myself look up, expecting to see the sky above that water. But the only thing I saw was the ceiling. That moldy, rotting ceiling. I just sat there and kept drowning. I felt my body want to fall deeper, hoping I'd drown so far I'd just not float up. I knew I wasn't in water, though. I was just in a disgusting house with those stupid gnomes that can't even speak and probably have the brain power of a pebble. I wasn't drowning, but it felt like it, and I sobbed out some words finally. Hazel, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I started to unzip the rucksack, reaching in for something that I knew would help me get out of here. But just as I was about to grab it, a knock came from the door.
Hello? Is this the home of Ivy Jones?
The voice sounded like it could barely breathe, but the fact it said my surname made me feel frozen still. I sat there, fearing to even answer his question.
A guest has asked me to find you, Hazel.
I felt all of my tiredness stop in just that 1 second. Who? The door suddenly opened and in came a creature. A man in a bellboy outfit at those fancy hotels. His skin was pale and white like wax. His face itself was melting. Like his whole body was melting. Like a candle. How he even stood was beyond me. He had his arms behind his back and slowly approached me. And as he did, he finally stuck out one of his waxy hands. It looked more like a stump with half-poking digits than a hand.
Come with me, and I'll take you to her. Come now.
I grabbed his hand, and as I did, a sudden light came from outside. It was so bright, I winced. I looked up and saw that there was suddenly a doorway. A doorway just there in the middle of the front yard. I followed him, my hand now holding his little stump, as he slowly took me to the door. I felt a comfort, something in me, feeling a joy for the first moment in a long time. I felt like I had hope, real, actual hope.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination.